Okay, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On tonight's show, very special guests, multiple guests, two old friends that have investigated this smiley face killing phenomenon. And Jim and I go back to 2017, 2016, I think. And he runs the Twitter feed Smiley Face Cult, so you can see all of his postings going way back. And he and I have done 3 shows. You can see all of my true crime shows are now compiled on a podcast titled True Crime Reader, William Ramsey. So you can see the interviews or listen to the interviews I've done with Jim. And Igor and I have done 3 interviews as well. They're all there at True Crime Reader as well. And I really kind of reached out to these guys after people are sending me, not even Jim, but there's a lot more recent events that are very Smiley Face Killers, like a lot of deaths. And so we're going to talk about those. But welcome, Jim and Igor. Welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks William.
All right, cool. So for people, maybe both of you can just do a brief background and how you got involved in the Smiley Face Killers before we talk about this recent kind of these recent events.
Igor, would you like to go first?
Sure, I would love to go first. I guess considering both Jim and Will kind of influenced me. I obviously got interested from the Gannon and Duarte New York theory with regards to the smiley face graffiti, but what really drew my interest was the fact that the cases kept developing and there was new cases every year. And it obviously wasn't a phenomenon that had stopped. So that, researching further cases and starting and doing some stuff with Will kind of is where I began, I would say.
Interesting. I've wanted to talk to, I've been a fan for a while, Igor. I think a lot of your discussions is fascinating. I got into this many years back. I was actually in Minnesota on my first job out of college. I saw something about a couple stories that all these young men were being found in the river where I had just been shown a beautiful part of Minnesota. And that's where it started for me, like 2004, 2005. And then, I was mildly interested. It really wasn't interested. I saw some stuff on Fox News and like a lot of people. And, in short, this started happening in Atlanta where I live. And I knew it immediately. And it went from a couple kids to being almost over 50 young males in Georgia, all the same stories. But as I started to investigate, I created my Twitter page to try to just expose people, local media, politicians, where these pockets of young men are being are vanishing and are being found in water and no one cares. And I thought that I could use the internet and Twitter to try to get out in front of this stuff when these stories break and try to embarrass the media and politicians and show people and try to get them educated so they could tell people and tell their kids or their friends about what's going on in America. And it's just been a wild ride. But William's been very supportive to me and my work since I've started. I owe him a great deal of gratitude.
So you do some great work, Jim. I'm just going to put that in there. I mean, you get knowledge of cases before anyone does, and I still to this day don't know how you know so quickly. I guess you have people messaging you, but quite impressive.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, and you guys have to go to Jim Smith's Twitter feed, which is at Smiley Face Cult, because he's got all these updates that we're going to talk about today. But my start, just to let people know, was I thought it was an urban myth, and then I followed this one case of Joey LaBute that I've talked to the guys from True Crime Garage about. But Joey LaBute was really my first introduction out of Columbus, Ohio. And I said, if this guy's going to be found in water, I'm going to freak out. And sure enough, he was found in the Scioto River, I think 19 days after he disappeared out of a bar, kind of the classic MO. And so that really kind of made me really want to research more. And then there were just follow-on cases after follow-on cases. Dakota James was a huge case that I followed that was out of Pittsburgh. And that's what led me to write my first and second documentaries. The first one featured a lot of input from Jim Smith. That was Smiley Face Killers, who was abducting, torturing, and murdering young men in the U.S. and U.K. And then the second one was The Global Slaughter Continues. Smiley Face Killers, The Global Slaughter Continues. So you can see both of those on Vimeo. But the reason I reached out is because there are many new cases. I'm going to try to post up some of the articles on YouTube so people can see some of these names. Jim, do you want to kind of start with one of these first people that you came across kind of in the last 2 or 3 months?
Yeah, I mean, it's I'll say that since COVID, this has really slowed. The murders have slowed, but they've started to slowly but surely come back as America has been opened up. But in the last 45 days since leading up to Halloween, it has exploded again. And there's young men, I mean, every other day. And they're not even trying to hide it. I mean, they're literally the same. I mean, people being kicked out of bars, being in fights, being asked to leave. It's pretty scary. And what the most thing that's scary is that it's literally all over. And it's the same thing that Detective Gannon and Professor Gilbertson said 15 years ago, was that sometimes multiple men go missing on the same night in different states, right? And then they'll all be found in water. And that's what we've really started to see. I mean, definitely there was a pocket, I would say, right before Halloween. The first one that really I noticed was Brendan Santo at Michigan State, which Michigan State has he went missing on 10/29 right before Halloween. And is still missing. And he was on the campus of Michigan State University, which has had multiple victims. There's other stories, terrible stories of young men being found on campus or vanishing. It looked like Halloween was a pretty big night because the next or 2 nights later on Halloween, there was another guy who's already been found in Chicago. His name is Anaki Baskarin. He's already been found dead.
And then 10 days later, there was Garrett Walker in Tuscaloosa, which was pretty much exactly the same as those two.
Walking home, leaving a bar, found his personal belongings on the river.
I'd like to throw in there that the case that got Will started there, Joey LaBute, is a great case to go to as kind of like a preliminary case when researching these, and in terms of a case that has been ruled a homicide, and which is essentially prototypical of the MO. And it almost validates the MO when you read what happened in the LaBute case, because he was seen on CCTV leaving the bar, sentient, not overly drunk. When his body was found, it was found in an area that had already been searched repeatedly, as I'm reading here. The cause of death wasn't drowning for LaBute because he showed no water in his lungs, so an undetermined cause of death, but it was ruled a homicide. So that essentially, the perfect case for a validation, because it goes to show that all these cases that followed suit from this could also, in a certain light, be deemed a homicide as well if you had different people looking at it, or a fresh view, so to speak.
Yeah, great point. Funny you should bring that case up. I want to point out something that it really drives me crazy online these days, where sometimes people reach out to me and they're so used to being stuck on what they saw 15 years ago, and they don't understand that what is happening has changed. It has evolved. It's much more. And for instance, LaBute was a homosexual. People think that all the victims are, straight, beautiful frat boys, got everything going for them. Yeah, they like them too, but something has changed. And if you watch it every single day, I mean, like I do, like you guys do, you can see the change just in the victims, because the stories are the same, but the victims are a little different. And LaBute being gay, there's a lot of these victims are gay or bi, and not all, but a lot.
There's a good spectrum of victims, and I would say that lends to the notion that the killers are not necessarily targeting people that are of a certain lifestyle, but more so people that are in a certain circumstance.
For sure.
Or in a vulnerable circumstance, which could be a wide range of people, which is why you see, homosexual, you see people of color, you see all kinds of different, you see Chinese cases, Asian cases.
For sure. For
And
sure.
I don't necessarily believe they're targeting someone specifically because of their nationality or how they perceive their lifestyle is necessarily. More so they're just in a particular vulnerable circumstance.
True. That's a great point too. And I also want to point out that, depending on the area and the pocket of where it is, sometimes the victims are different, but they're all the same in that pocket. Maybe and
Interesting.
they also maybe the crime will be a little different compared to, maybe cases like in Columbus, like you're talking about, Joey, right? There's been other cases of young men in Columbus, Ohio. That's a hot spot.
Just missing. There's a couple with just missing. They haven't found the bodies there yet, right?
Right. There was one last guy. He's never been found. I forget his name.
Well, it's interesting you say that because the Chicago cases that are the most recent ones, 2 of the 3 are African American, right? So Jelani Day disappeared August 24th, Oribi Contain 26th, and then Inaki Bhaskaran, all out of Chicago within, 6 months, 2 months of each other. Right?
Someone on your timeline also brought the case of Brian Bone to the forefront. He disappeared celebrating his birthday in Florida in relatively similar time frame, and he was also I don't recall he definitely wasn't white though.
No, Brian,
what was his name?
Brian Bone.
Brian. Oh yeah, that's right. I remember that case.
We was out partying in Orlando. Again, another place that a lot of people who are stuck on what they read 15 years ago don't understand that Florida is actually a very big hotspot for these smiley face murders. Panama City, Destin, Orlando, the University of Florida State at Tallahassee, Miami. There's definitely been an expansion, although there's been no murders in Panama City or the Destin area in over a year, 2 years. But I was going to say, since I've noticed something since the new show that was put on Detective Gilbertson or excuse me,
on
Detective
Oxygen.
Yes.
Right.
Ever since that show came out, and it did get a lot of publicity, a lot more young African American men have been victims that I've seen. Even where people are pointing it out, I was seeing comments on this chat room on your already. They were saying the same thing they've noticed. I've definitely noticed. Smart. I mean, there's always been some African Americans that victims. Joseph Smedley, he's a couple years older. That was at the University of Indiana. I'm very good friends with his sister and his family. He was an African American, just like Jelani Day. Looked just like him. Super smart, very talented, got everything going for him, and
right. There was another black guy out of Chicago who was a medical doctor. I don't know I can't remember his name, but he was African American. Do you remember? And his brother was looking for him. I can't remember.
I do.
Name. Josh.
There's been so many, man.
So many. It's hard to keep track.
It's really sad. It's sad that we're to the point where, man, I have trouble keeping up. There's the names of these poor men.
And it's just the same story. They're out partying. They take these pictures of the CCTV cameras are all the same. It's just like the same MO. They're out. Oh, he was out. Garrett Walker drinking.
Yeah.
It's just incredible.
Never seen anybody at the University of Alabama. I have seen victims, obviously, in Alabama, different places, but that's the first victim I've ever seen in Tuscaloosa.
Right. Yeah, no, it's incredible. I think a lot, if not all of these, all fit the profile.
Oh, absolutely. I was explaining to Igor, but I find his work so fascinating, and I'm always looking for things to show us who's doing this definitively. And one of the things I've noticed is just how big this is and how it continues to grow. And it seems to me, and I've said for years, that the victims, whoever is doing this, they're being trained because they're the same story over and over again. You can just read my...
Can I put something to you, Jim? Is it possible that the success of the cases over the years have kind of added to the proliferation and why it's so widespread? Because essentially, like anything in life, once you see it successful, Essentially, you have to be in the know. You have to know that it's happening, obviously, and you have to realize and see that this is obviously a very polished and successful way of doing this. But that thought process that it's a polished and successful way didn't necessarily exist 15 years ago. I mean, the cases that have happened in that time have probably lended to the impetus of potential people who are interested in this MO or variations of this MO.
They definitely follow a script, and they definitely use the same tricks over and over again, all over. And whoever is doing this, it's organized, man. I know y'all know this, but when I say kill cycle, I post a lot of time, and I feel like I say, man, we're in a kill cycle. And what that means is, and we've been in one since Halloween, we're going to continue to be in one until after New Year's. There's going to be a lot more victims coming up, and starting any day. I mean, we're going to start seeing a lot more leading up to New Year's and Christmas. But they all start working at the same time, right? It's not random. It's like, I do the same thing every day. I read missing men as soon as I go out missing. That's how I'm able to put out victims so fast, because I'm able to see the cases immediately, instead of before I started doing this, people only saw victims after they were found in the water. And then they would say, oh, well, this happened. I'm ahead of them. And you can start seeing it like it's boom, 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 just like it on Halloween. So somebody's given an order. The order goes out, because then it just stops, and then it'll stop for a couple weeks, and then it'll start back up again. Boom, 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 just like now. It sure looks like an order has gone out.
It's funny, you see what one of the comments says that from Kill Ball, that he could conclude that there's small cells of disciplined teams working an area and then moving off to another area. I don't know if Ball, the commenter, or anyone in the chat, or if everyone in the chat has read the article by Jack Murphy, but he comes to very, very similar conclusions in his article.
Let me see if I can pull that up.
That's
a great article.
Jack Murphy is a trained professional so when we're talking about, you made a great point, Jim, that it's very coordinated, and that's exactly what I see when I analyze the MO, is something that's very coordinated, cuts out a lot of loose variables or unknown variables, or attempts to, so the type of person to know this type of work, black ops work is what I would best describe it as, because that's what it is in its finest.
Right,
is somebody like Jack Murphy, who's extremely trained in that type of stuff. And you see at the top, expert analysis. It actually is an expert analysis.
For sure.
And I believe he comes to very similar conclusions that the commenter Ball is referring to.
He cuts out the conspiracy theory, which I try to do the same thing. I'm irritated by the people who muddy the waters, per se, of this. And I won't name any names, but there's a lot of people out there trying to make a buck, and they've really hurt innocent people because they're muddying the waters about what's really happening. And Jack Murphy's, I thought, article was brilliant, because it's just cut and dry, which is what I thought. William's always been that way. I find what you are the same way. We're not pretending that monsters are grabbing kids. I don't believe that, right? I mean, the data that what I keep and what I put out, all it does is just shows where these men are being killed at. And when you start looking at that data, you can definitely see the pockets. You can definitely see where this is happening over and over again.
Right.
And it's by people, every crime scene I've ever been to too, which I've been to a bunch. It's all places that are off the beaten path, a majority of them that only a local person would know. So these aren't people in town hanging out. They would get caught doing that. They know where the cameras are. They know where the roads are. They know where the soft spots are, everything. I mean, and I think if something falls, they don't take people. It's stopped. But if everything checks up and plan goes through.
Yeah, you were referring to the fact that the killers, to be so successful, they would have to abort so much, and you're right to a certain degree that they're not necessarily screwing up. So they're not screwing up in the eyes of the public, or they're so successful because they probably are picky, very picky with how they operate. And yeah, that's a great point. Yeah.
They definitely make mistakes too, though. And that's another misconception that people think, well, if this is real, how come people have never been busted? Well, you got local law enforcement, which, I respect law enforcement, but local law enforcement is doing an awful job. Awful, because they allow this to happen and don't investigate. When I got involved in this, I investigated very little and was talking to people. When you talk to families and you go, try to add up the evidence yourself, it's pretty obvious. And when I say they make mistakes, I know they make mistakes because there was a guy who survived in Austin, and he was missing 3 days, was downtown. There's another pocket that's been semi-quiet. But long story short, they were looking at the security footage on the wrong night. They're looking out for when he went missing. They should have been looking for the night he was dumped. Again, just shoddy police work. And I definitely have started to understand why the FBI doesn't get involved anymore, because there's obviously corruption at the FBI that we're seeing regularly.
No doubt.
They don't care about this stuff anymore. They can't use it, so they don't do anything about it.
Well, there was FBI and Secret Service at the Dakota James hearing with Dakota James's mother. That's the last I heard of it. That was a while back. But
it's an interesting distinction, though, that the FBI didn't say that any particular case was not a homicide, because there's a lot of cases in these bunch that can be seen as a homicide. They're just saying they're not connected, which is what we're not contending that all of them are connected either. We're just contending that they're connected by the MO, by the way that people think about how they operate and how they operate. And that's what the FBI could. It's weird because when you look at their conclusions, for all we know, they are actually investigating specific cases, right? Because they haven't said that there's a connection. They said that they don't believe there's a connection between cases. What they haven't said is that, certain cases are homicides, certain pockets of cases are homicides. We haven't even heard from them in years. And there's been hundreds of cases to analyze, to look at, hundreds of really fishy cases that fall exactly in line with the cookie cutter that's developed. I don't know that we can say they're not looking into every case. I mean, who knows? I mean, they keep their cards close to the vest, I guess, for a live investigation.
Yeah, I don't think they are, because I feel like they would do more. I mean, if you're looking at with Dakota James, you brought that up. They did nothing for the James family. Nothing. In fact,
and that guy had the Garrett. Remember the Garrett around his neck that wasn't recorded in the medical examination?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Let's see if I can bring that up. I don't know if people have seen that, but that's pretty harrowing.
There's also other cases that are the same that I have talked to families, and they've sent me pictures of their loved ones deceased. And I've seen firsthand the damage that's been done to the victims, these young men with trauma. And I'm talking cases where it's reported that, there was no sign of trauma or anything. They'll report that in the mail, but the parents are like, no, this is right. I mean,
that was the original case, right? The original case out in New York. The guy was blowtorched.
Yes, he was. He was melted. But no, I'm talking about people I know personally who have, they've told me that that's not reported correctly. And I don't think I think that's intentional. I really do.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's too big. I mean, the Dakota James is a good one. What was the guy's name out of McLean? What was his name out of New York? The original Victim Zero.
Yeah, Victim Zero.
Anyway, it'll come to me.
I'd like to throw in there before Jim's point about the success of the killers. I was speculating with some guys on the Discord that the missing cases, which we've seen about 10 to 15% of the cases which fall within the MO cookie cutter, are about missing cases. They have never found the body. I would speculate between 8 and 15% of the cases. I think it's very possible that since we're talking about a group that aborts when things are not perfect, obviously, then we're also talking about a group that would never dump a body if the abduction was messy, or if they were unable to obtain the victim without, leaving defensive wounds or signs of a crime.
That's happened though, but it's ignored.
It's ignored, correct?
Yes.
The fact that not all cases are cases of in water, and that we do see this exact MO, but the body never found.
Right.
For sure. That's a great point. I would say that's another thing that has been growing, is that the victims have been found less and less. Gone. It's pretty weird why. But I have seen defensive wounds where, there's been a couple cases where there have been gunshots. And this is something that's never been brought up. People think, Smiley Face Killers don't have guns. No, they're using guns 100% because there's been a couple victims that have been shot. I assume
as a last resort, correct? They'll almost certainly have guns.
Yes.
They won't be using them at
Right.
the start. They'll be using some type of electro weapon or some type
Yep.
of capacitation device.
Yep.
Whatever you can imagine and dream up. But if the guy gets away, if the guy starts running and you have no control of the situation, you have to shoot.
Correct.
Hopefully you have a silencer. I assume they do. I mean, we're talking, we've spoken in previous videos about, infrared capabilities and electroshock weapons. I mean, it gets pretty aggressive gets pretty mind blowing when you talk about abduction tools. But almost certainly they have weapons, and we'll have to discharge them at some point.
Right. Oh, man.
Yeah. 2 victims here in Georgia had gunshots.
And you would never know they were connected. You would just assume that they were some type of gunshot robbery gone wrong. You would never assume that it was an abduction gone wrong.
Well, one of the guys is 17, and he was missing. And I found a smiley face graffiti where he was found here in Georgia, and he was missing 45 days. And it's reported he was only deceased like 3 days, and he had a gunshot, and he didn't die from a gunshot, and they found him in the creek. And there was another case, Kelly Nash, that I can actually connect directly to other victims here in Georgia. He vanished at night, walked from his house. He had a gunshot. He was found in the lake.
Have you guys ever heard, Igor or Jim, have you heard of the whole femicide slaughter of women in Juarez, Mexico?
No.
So
Yes,
there has
yeah,
okay.
I have, yeah.
Well, this has been ongoing for 30 years, probably back to the 90s, which is young women in the maquiladores get abducted and their bodies are found, and there's really no recourse. Like there's been multiple investigations. There's been investigations from El Paso into it by journalists. There's a number of books. There's really good podcasts actually about it. But Kill Ball mentioned about this, that it's very there is some kind of overlapping element, because there's an element of selection of these young girls. They were an ultra wealthy. Well, the cartels were basically running this thing where they would select the girls through putting up fake kind of computer training, and then they would select the girls, and those girls were selected for abduction and gang rape and murder. And it was something that happened in the group where this, like if they celebrated a big drug transaction, they would abduct a girl and just victimize her and kill her. And that was a way of social bonding. It's not believable, but that's exactly what the conclusion was of a lot of people, is that these women are being killed. And it's in the number of 400. And there's been very few arrests. There's been some fake arrests and corruption within the Juarez.
Same with the Smiley Face Killer. Who knows how long that's been going on for? You said 400. That's in the internet era. What about in the 70s?
Yeah,
what
that
about
might
the
be
70s
low.
and the 30s? For all we know, because the assumption is that it's cartel related. I mean, that's what everyone's main assumption is.
But it's interesting, Igor, because there are similarities, because these women were pre-selected, they're impoverished, right? Mm-hmm. Very poor, and it's almost like the victimology of the perpetrator knows that there's not going to be any recourse. And if you look at Dakota James, for example, it's almost like he was selected. You know that article by Nicole Weisense.
Oh, he was selected. That was not a lot of these guys are selected. I really believe. I feel like a lot of these guys
or through the gay apps or whatever. Like there's total connection there. Yeah.
Look at all these victims. What just happened in the last month. Garrett Walker, for instance. Where was he going by himself? I mean, a lot of these guys, including Dakota James, you brought that up. I've always suspected that he knew he trusted the wrong people,
Right.
and that's
So
why there was no struggle.
Right. His last picture on CCTV was walking with his phone. He's probably on some app.
Yep.
And it also goes against the presumption of that he was too drunk, which is to actually work your phone and walk at the same time. You can't be that inebriated. I'm gonna put just a sec. I'm gonna put up a picture of Dakota James. It's very graphic, so if people are sensitive, do not look at this.
I'm not personally sold on the selection part. I mean, yes, to a certain degree, it's kind of scary how close a lot of the victims look and their characteristics. That's very scary. And I mean, you would think that they're technically, searching for, but as you said, searching for a specific individual. But as you said, there's so many new cases with, a wide variety of individuals of all walks of life, all walks of characteristics, I would say, not all walks of life. It typically is young males. That's, of all characteristics. And I believe it's not more of a selection, more so it's just the person being in a vulnerable situation. The hallmark that I see in a lot of these cases is that like the cases can be focused down to cases where the victim was kicked out of a bar, celebrating something or a holiday, right? And when you kick out every other, or when you take out every other case from your pool, even though there's going to be a lot of cases that maybe jump in there, maybe don't. If you focus on cases where the person was kicked out of a bar celebrating something and there's holidays, you realize there's a lot of cases that fall into those that category. Like a lot of those cases, maybe 50% fall into that category where they either kicked out of the bar celebrating something or holidays. And the reason why those two things are connected is because the person either draws attention to themselves as being overly inebriated as they leave, right? Which is what kicked out of the bar essentially would be. Or there is just lots of inebriated people on the streets and you have more than average type of people to leave the bar at 3 a.m. alone, celebrating something, holidays, right? Not everybody every day is leaving a bar at 2-3 a.m. at night.
Right. And one of the reasons I was talking with somebody else about these cases, one of the reasons why there might be more victims in the cold is that there's not as many people to see it, right? So the victim's out there, but nobody else is out there. Nobody's crazy enough to be in 20-degree weather.
Unless you're involved in nightlife, you will never be outside at that time. Correct.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Definitely a lot of less people out at night where people don't, almost all of these murders too happen late at night,
right.
Which makes you think that these aren't regular people doing that. Regular people like myself, I pass out at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, right? I'm getting old. I mean, to be up that late at night, that says a lot about who's doing this.
Which is why there's a lot of young people. Continue.
Right.
Sorry.
Let me just comment on this picture of Dakota James so I can take it down. This was him found 40 days after he was missing. This was not found by the Chinese medical examiner. And I'm not a medical professional, but I can tell that there's something that's been around his neck. You can see the blood. And the other thing about him is that if he had been in the water for 40 days, his skin would have been a disaster.
Marbling.
So where is he for those days? He was probably alive for 35 days.
Reminds me a lot of the Patrick McNeil case. That is scary similar. Patrick McNeil had Garrett or something around his neck as well.
Victim one. You said it.
Victim one, that's it.
Patrick McNeil. Yeah.
Right, and it's the same thing. You can go to Jenkins, right? So Jenkins was one who, he had hair in his hand and all this other stuff. So just you can go through these cases where they find extra stuff. That was one that you turned me on to was Naz Mohammed, right? That guy had broken teeth and stuff. Like they never reported that.
Oh no, much worse than that, brother. You're Mason Cox, who was murdered with David Wood on New Year's Eve in Georgia. There was 4 men that week, but those two were murdered together. And he's got a broken nose. He's got broken teeth. Looks like he was beaten. Naz Mohammed, his trauma was so severe that the police, which you can't find this online anymore, but as soon as his body was found, they said that it looked like he had been hit by a car and then was able to jog and fall into the creek. He had such severe trauma, but I had been to that park. The road is like 3/4 of a mile from where the creek was. So There's no way.
The water really helps them. It's actually insane. In so many of these cases, you see how difficult it is for the MO to do, or the ME to do their job, because of how much post-mortem wounds you get while being in the water. I mean, you don't imagine being in the water, you're going to get a lot of wounds, but there's rocks, there's branches and twigs, there's fish. So one of the recent cases, he was only in the water for 4 days, and his body was eaten by the wildlife or the fish. I mean, in some of these cases, the body had been in the water purportedly for months. So you can only imagine the ME trying to find some type of defensive wound when the guy's been bitten to shit by fish and hit twigs everywhere. I mean,
turtles, boats.
Oh God. Yeah. I almost feel for them, but it just adds to how successful and why it's been such a popularly used MO over the years.
I mean, that's a great point. You know, from a standpoint of law enforcement as well, when a body is found in water, that's not a murder scene. That's a recovery.
Great point.
And it's not a murder scene. So no one's doing anything. No one's going to, and definitely with the way crime statistics are and how our country's run, they're not going to go change a drowning into a murder. That's going to screw a lot of people's day up big time. That's the other part of this.
There's a woman named Andrea Zafaris, and her job is to actually train law enforcement on how to properly handle bodies found in water. So if you go to her Twitter and you Google her name, it's Zafares, Zafaris. Andrea, she has a great body of research. Zafaris, Zafares.
Ares.
Yeah. So what she does is she goes around and schools police officers on how to properly handle bodies found in the water. Because what happens is, as Jim just astutely said, in which I don't think anybody's made that point that I can recall. I made that point privately to myself, but it's refreshing to hear Jim put that point out, is that when they find the body, they don't immediately treat it like a murder scene. Because to treat a body found in water like a murder scene, you would have to tape off the entire body of water to find out where the body went in. So the police would never do that because that's way too time consuming. So there's a very specific method they have to go through, but nobody goes through it because everyone assumes a body found in water was accidental. It's not a homicide. And a lot of the police officers, they're just not schooled. They don't know. They're not knowledgeable. They don't come across drowning homicides enough.
Right. Oh, man, it's crazy. And have I missed any of the other cases that came out? Because I probably have. I mean, what do I have here? This was one from 2014. That's hair.
There's a ton, but not all. You know how it is too. It's like not every case gets the same amount of attention. Some cases become a huge national story. Dakota James, Jelani Day, right? Shane Montgomery. Yes. A lot of cases don't even get noticed.
Just go through. Yeah,
it's really sad. There's been
how long was Brian Bone missing? Do you know?
Not a couple days, less than a week, I think. Not long. Speaking of, Santo, who's still missing, I firmly believe he's going to be found before Christmas. I think he's being held, and why, who knows? But there's going to be an important date coming up, whether it's Christmas or there's a lot of victims are found on the same days in December, right? And it could be at the end of the month, it could be Christmas, but he's going to be found soon.
Yeah. I had one from you recently where you predicted the guy's going to be found, and he was found the next day.
I didn't say that. It was him and Anaki. And I said it was like a Wednesday, and I said I have a feeling one of these two will be found either tomorrow or the next before the weekend. And the next day he was found, and that's because somebody made a comment about PR on these comments. These people love the media. They love people talking about it. They want that body to be found before the weekend so they can put that story on the news. And happens all the time. That's why I knew that both those men, it was spreading about them missing, and they've just eaten it up. And I knew one of them would be found Friday, and that's what happened. And that's why I feel like is they want the attention. They like it. And I think that's part of the Smiley. They're laughing at us. They think it's hilarious.
That was Garrett Walker that you predicted. Let me see if I can post it here.
Oh, yeah. No, I knew he would be found in the river. I predicted that he would be found in that river. I knew just by the story. You know, I mean, he guess what he was, too. Guess what major he was?
I don't know. What was he?
He was very bright. Yeah, very bright.
An engineer.
Engineer, wow.
Funny, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good comment by Hilldog, juking the stats. I think it's worth noting that that contributes a lot to the success of this MO is the fact that an unwitnessed drowning victim is probably the worst nightmare of any detective ever, because it's basically going to be a very hard case to work on, and it's almost definitely not going to be cleared if you work on it as a homicide. But if you dub it as undetermined, which they have a lot of these cases, or accidental, it counts as a clear.
Right.
So they basically, it's just a cop out, and it's just a way for them, for colonels to become majors or whatever they say in The Wire. So it's
so true. Great. I love The Wire. That's where I learned about the crime statistics. That's a great point about how they make the crime statistics say what they want to say. Hence, we are not going to turn an accidental drowning into a murder. That ain't happening.
I think I want to just, while I have you guys, I think I want to focus on a couple more recent cases that could be drawn that have some nice connections to previous cases.
Please do.
I think Anaki Baskarin, we were talking on Twitter, has connections to quite a few previous cases in Chicago. I think 3 or 4 cases, very common Smiley Face Killer cases, went missing within the same square mile as Anaki Baskarin. Mm-hmm. So I'm watching that case very closely to see how the autopsy comes out. The second one's Brandon Santo. He has another that was on campus at in Michigan, Michigan State, which is exactly same square mile as a handful, I think 2 or 3 other cases.
Yeah, lots, yeah.
And so those 2 cases, I would tell your viewers to keep a star on, and they can go back and see which cases I'm referring to. I don't have them listed. But 2 other cases which your viewers in the Discord brought up were the 2 cases of the kids found in the quarry at USC.
Yeah, right. South Carolina.
Yeah.
Yeah, quarry cases.
Great point.
Yeah, those have an interesting. So those 2 cases happened in 2020 and 2021. And those 2 cases are really interesting because they have a very interesting connection to 2 quarry cases that happened a year apart in Whitewater.
Right, in Wisconsin, right?
Yep. 6 years apart.
Yeah.
That was Benjamin. So the 2 cases in USC were Michael Keene in 2021, Keen, and Sam London, Laundon, in 2020. Both very similar cases, went missing on Saturday night, found in a quarry, neither deemed homicides.
Pull that up.
The latter at an accidental fall. The former Keene, I don't believe there's a cause of death yet because that's the 2021 case. The 2 cases from Whitewater are Benjamin Fuder, Fuder, and these cases from Whitewater are essentially like exactly the same case as the USC cases.
Wow,
just it's weird.
I got another one too.
Yeah,
I got another one exactly the same.
Mark J. Wagner is the pair for Fuder.
Wagner, and they were both in the bar central area of Whitewater, if you remember.
I remember. Both are missing from the same area.
Yeah, missing from the same bar area, and then they made it to the quarry. It did,
Yeah, I was saying I got another victim here in Georgia. That was the week after Naz Muhammad, and he was also found at the Vulcan Quarry.
Wow.
In Newnan, Georgia, and I predicted it. He posted that day that he was a picture of the rock quarry, and then went back out with 3 other friends that night, and then they left him, and they never found it, and they found him a couple days later. They had divers that were searching for him. They never found him, and then like 4 days later, they found his body underneath rocks in the quarry, and it said that he fell and rocks had fallen on him, and that's why divers had missed him.
It's the same idea when you think about it, because even if the person, let's say, has a couple, defensive wounds that aren't very large, what happens when you toss them down in the quarry? How many wounds do they get there? Even if they're dead before. I mean, it's hard to say, but it seems like a very similar, even though they're not ending up in water, it seems like when you look at the areas where the quarry deaths happen, there's actually no good water in that area. And it makes you think, would they have used water had they been in a different geographic location?
Wow.
So true. I was going to say, while I got y'all both on the phone, and Igor, I'd love to hear your thoughts about this, but since I've started reading, collecting these stories and paying attention and doing what I do, there's been 4 crimes that are the same over and over and over again. And that's why I say it's accidental drownings like this. There's hypothermia, where not even in water, person's drinking. They try to say the guy passed out outside. He froze to death. I've seen that a lot. I've seen the submerged car trick, where same deal. And they put the victims in their car, and they slide them into the river or the lake somewhere or a pond somewhere. And I'm not saying every victim case is like that, but a lot of the cases and the circumstances where the men were is the exact same, and they vanish. And the last one is, I'll be quiet. The last one is throwing people off of a cliff, or they make it look like they jumped. And I can think of so many cases, specifically Ithaca, New York, where they have a strong smiley face cell, multiple ones, but in Ithaca, New York, a lot of victims found at the bottom of a ravine. And I've seen that a lot. Same circumstances. And that, to me, that's what is going on. And they all have plausible deniability from the law enforcement when this happens. All of them.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the way to approach it is the exact opposite way that somebody like Spingola approaches this. Mm-hmm. So Spingola loves to just make sweeping generalizations about victims and cases. I think the best way to attack the Smiley Face Killer when you're actually discussing it with someone who doesn't believe it is to focus on it case by case, because the cases truly do speak for themselves. And whether or not you are arguing that the cases are all connected or it's just distinct people using it, it's happening. And I think a guy like Spingola makes a lot of mistakes in his logic, and because he doesn't like to. I mean, for him to have someone focus on it case by case completely blows his position out of the water.
Absolutely.
So he can't do that. So his only defense is to entrench his position, which is that there is no connection and there is no killer, and basically all cases are not homicides, which is a very bold and aggressive stance to take, because we know that some are, and some are a lot are likely. How many need to be likely or homicides for us to be vindicated? Let's say only 5% of all the cases we deem relevant are homicides. Are we vindicated? I believe so. I think it's going to be a lot higher than 5%, but I believe 5% still means that's a very popular MO, which is why, a guy like Spingola, in his book, he didn't analyze a single case, which I believe to be relevant. He completely opened the net for cases, took in a bunch of different cases that, in my opinion, have no relevance to the Smiley Face Killer theory, and decided to decide, or in general, they're very wide, and all the cases he brought together, he brought them together because they're so wide and not because they're so close, and he did that on purpose.
Yep, sure did.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to comment on that.
I do want to comment, and I hope he listens. Now, he's a nice guy. I've been talking to him for a while.
I like him, and he's one of my. I read his stuff back in the day a lot, so I actually don't have a lot of bad stuff to say about him.
No, absolutely not.
From this,
I read his book. I bought his book. He fears me. He won't debate me because I can rip his book apart to shreds. And what you said was that he cast a very wide net. He picked and chose. And since then, I've sent him, tons of victims and said, hey, these guys are going to be found in Wisconsin. And he's always like, well, send me one that doesn't have any alcohol. I'll send him multiple ones. Oh, no, well, it's just a waste of time. I think he knows. He's a very smart man. He knows what we're saying is true. He's trying to sell books. He's trying to get publicity by being the flip side to the coin. my opinion.
He did some weird things. Like the first weird thing he did was as you said, he tries to summarily dismiss all alcohol cases as people who are drunk do stupid things. And he quoted some case where some person got caught in a duct shaft, or like a duct, or like an elevator shaft, after they were drinking and they died. And
I was
I'm
in
thinking,
lacrosse.
yeah, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, is this guy all there? Like, he was really smart back in the day, I thought. I mean, he might be losing a little bit of marbles, because that actually is a horrible, horrible argument. Why?
Well, there's so many
case,
victims in lacrosse. There's been so many victims in Wisconsin alone. Lacrosse, Eclair, one of the busiest states. He's seen them all one by one by one. He knows.
Just today, he quoted you on Twitter saying that he used a case where a teenager drove his car into the lake as evidence
45 years ago
as to why you were wrong.
Yeah.
He literally said, don't show this case to Jim Smith, because it's going to discredit him. And all I can do as I'm reading this thinking, how in the bloody world does this discredit you or anything that we're doing? I mean, it's so irrelevant and nowhere near the points that we're making or the arguments that we're making. It's like he's being obtuse. I don't know if it's on purpose to sell books, or he has some type of personal hatred for alcoholics. It's hard to tell. I mean, I still do.
Personal for sure. It's something he doesn't like, that it makes law enforcement look like they're not doing their job, in my opinion. Right? He doesn't like that.
That's a great point.
He was a cop for decades, right?
He doesn't. I don't think he appreciated Detective Gannon and Professor Gilbertson coming into Wisconsin and the attention it got. You know, I've already challenged him, and I'll challenge anybody. I will debate him anywhere, anytime. We can go case by case. I can rip that book apart in 3 seconds. I've read it. Pretty scary. I mean, it's sad. To me, as law enforcement, something else he didn't do in his book, he didn't talk to any families. He didn't dive deep into any of those cases. And I've challenged him. Go talk to those families up there. Go interview 20 families of victims. I'll give you the list and tell me what they say, and then come back to me.
Such a good point, man. That's an excellent point. Yeah. Because they're all in there. I mean, you can just go through these families. Something's going on. I list a lot of those in the first documentary that I made. Is just like all those families. Like, my kid was hit misfortune. There's a team rolling around, going from city to city, killing people, was one parent's statement.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's off the charts.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh!
You talk to the families. You talk to the families of victims, which I've talked to.
Yeah.
And they all say the same thing. I very rarely have ever met anybody said, "Yeah, you know, he just got drunk and drowned." No, you know, it was just an accident. Just leave me alone. You know, quite the opposite. People say, "Yeah, police won't talk to me." This was really weird. He's never acted this way before. He was a great swimmer. He had no reason to be there. Where is his phone? Where is his shoes? Where is this? I mean, there's so many. All these families have so many open-ended questions. I get zero help. That's really what drives me.
That's why Spingola is really scared to dive into each specific case, and why anybody who really has trouble convincing somebody about the Smiley Face Killer modus operandi, what you need to do is pick specific cases and clusters that have very close similarities and just focus on them, and don't even try and pitch some type of global conspiracy. You just focus on certain areas, and people see the cases. They speak for themselves, the cases.
Sure
and
do.
A guy like Spingola cannot get deep into that, because his entire book would be discredited based upon a couple cases, which are clearly either undetermined or homicides or something, clearly a suspect, which he refused to get anywhere close to.
You guys, there's a question here from Hill Doggy. She has a question. If you guys remember, the Luke Coleman case is one of the first drownings and forensic drowning cases. What's the name of that book? But she said the member suspect looks like a good fit for top suspect. Did anyone get his name? Do you remember anything like that?
Well, the Holman case is interesting because he called his parents or something like that, and I guess that's the one where his phone went off right as he was abducted.
Yeah.
And they went to the place where his phone went off, and there was it didn't look like he fell in the water at all, and it was like a place where it didn't look like he would possibly fall in the water. No cameras anywhere where he was last seen. It was a more residential area. if I recall correctly. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. I don't recall the smiley face angle.
That's
But
the
that was
hotel.
that was one of the first Gannon Gilbertson cases.
Yeah, that was at the
man.
hotel where they were staying. Detective Gannon, I believe, that smiley face. They wondered if they were being taunted. If I remember that correctly.
I don't see it though. That's the problem. Maybe from some specific individuals who maybe committed some crimes with this MO, but for me, there's too much effort in ensuring that they escape justice and that it's seen it's occulted, right? The ultimate circumstance of the victim is occulted from the public. That it's almost counterproductive, or it almost is harming their other work that they're putting in to put some type of smiley face or connection there.
Right.
But I'm not saying that doesn't mean that because our position, all three of our positions, is that there's so many cases and likely so many unsubs using this MO that who knows what some unsubs have done in the past. I mean, if they're getting away with this, they clearly feel like they're superior. I mean, it's not out of the question that they taunted. They were taunting people back in the day with tags. Not out of the question.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hill Doggy, where's that? Would you have a picture, or what are you talking about as far as specifics about who this member suspect is? But your question does remind me of the case of the guy outside of Philadelphia who was found in a river face down, whose name I can't remember, but the band leader was wearing a T-shirt with a smiley face. Do you guys remember that case?
Yes.
What was his name? Do you remember? I can't remember his name now. Shoot.
Yeah.
I see his face. It's outside of Pittsburgh. What's his name? That was a big case too. Gosh, so many cases now I can't remember.
I think he's getting he might be getting Holman confused with Jenkins. I think because when he's talking about the K9 hit on the band member's van, I recall that being as the Jenkins case.
K9 hit on the band member's band.
I could be wrong, but I'm almost 80% sure that was the Jenkins case.
Yeah, Holman was the guy who was the basketball star, Oktoberfest, Lacrosse, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
You think he's getting the case maybe confused?
Yep, I believe so.
Yes, so many cases though. I mean, it's just insane that the faces change, but the story is the same.
That's a great way of putting it. That's a great.
Really sad and depressing.
It is.
And
yeah.
It's so frustrating, and it starts happening, and people start talking about it, and I feel like we're getting somewhere, and then the stories just fade away because the FBI and the local law enforcement just have no interest in doing this stuff.
Oh man, here's another question. Artists like Machine Gun Kelly, he likes to come to Cleveland in December, do a home concert as a ritual. He has a smiley face, nail polish, and clothing. What's the connection? It's very strange, but a lot of these celebrities and people, and I list them in movies, and at least my second documentary, there's smiley faces all over the place. And there's a lot of questions as to why. Is it a cult thing? Is there some secret esoteric meaning? There's a lot of things going on, and there's a lot of connections to known occultists. I mean, if you look at Alan Moore and The Watchmen, it just goes on and on. So,
yeah, it's in the culture.
Question. Yeah.
I would say within music, my guess is it means nihilism, right? So a lot of these, these music artists, they preach, a nihilistic lifestyle or, be against the grain night lifestyle. You see that with Justin Bieber's clothing. It's also a smiley face. I do believe that the deep esoteric meaning for all these music types for the smiley face is rooted in nihilism. I could personally be wrong, but I did put some time into that, as Will can attest to. So,
I wouldn't disagree with you because there's so much contempt for these men. It really is by these people doing this. They hate these people. There's a reason, like you said. There's so much work that's put into this. Specifically,
immense amounts. Yes.
Right. Why bring a body back that's been searched multiple times and dump it exactly where it
makes no sense. Makes no sense unless you're right.
Why leave shoes? Why leave shoes to torment people and then bodies are found?
It's almost like they're making it harder on themselves, but in reality, when you realize it, they're making it harder in order to make it easier, right? If you understand that, right? Or to making it harder to be able to get away with it. They're putting extra steps in to take out variables or unknown variables.
Yeah. The other thing is about people. I saw somebody say something about snuff films. I don't believe that that's the case. And I'll say because I could be wrong, but I don't think so, because if people were watching snuff films, some of these cases are really famous. I mean, I would think people would be to put two and two together a lot easier, right? And I just don't. I don't get. We're missing something where why men are brought back exactly where they were missing days later. If they were doing snuff films, they wouldn't go through that type of work. They would just get rid of the bodies. They're doing something intentionally to tell us something. We just don't know what it is.
Great point. So some of the cases may be snuff, a small minority of them, because it's a great point. But I think that's where you have to go case by case, and you can't make sweeping generalizations like a guy like Spingola, because you'll follow the same prey. Because you'll realize if you focus on a couple of these cases, you realize that they do tell you more than you know, more than you think about that specific case, and why it differentiates from other cases, and why it needs to be looked at within or by itself or within a small cluster as a result, as opposed to looking at all the cases at the same time.
Another thing is that I've talked to 3 men who I believe are survivors. They all had no memory for 60 hours.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yep. Boston.
All drugged at bars? Do they believe they were drugged at the bar? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Well, I'll say, okay, so one guy was in Boston. He was out drinking at bars on 420. He had to be rescued inside a wall in a tunnel. He didn't know how he got there. He was screaming for help. Police arrested him. He immediately passed out. No memory, 60 hours. He actually was charged with trespassing, poor bastard, after almost being murdered. The second one was here in Atlanta, and the guy was a vice president of his fraternity. He was at a fraternity party. They were having a big party, and he got up and had to give a speech, and that was really the last thing he remembered for 60 hours again. He should not have survived. He should have died. He thinks he was drugged at the party, at the fraternity party. He survived. He had over $100,000 in medical bills. All of his trauma was to his upper body. The police said he jumped off a train. He was train surfing.
I remember you telling me that.
That's not true. He never did. He was an engineer major too, like I was talking about earlier. The third victim was, like I mentioned earlier, was in Austin, Texas. He was at a party with friends. They went downtown. He was 21 at the time. He doesn't remember when they went downtown after the bar. He left his cell phone in the Uber, which that's pretty common as well in these cases. One of the cases, recently the phone was left at a friend's house or something, I think. Anyway, he was found 3 days later in the river. He has over $100,000 in medical bills and severe trauma. He had similar to the Georgia Tech student to his upper body. He should not have survived. He was supposed to die. 60 hours as well. Missing. Gone.
Wow. Same thing with Dakota James, right? Remember, he came to, and he's like, I don't know where I was. I don't know what happened.
Right. Another 2 weeks before he was murdered, and his friend saved him.
But he wasn't drugged on the night though, right? Which is what's interesting, right? He was, if I recall correctly, he was seen sentient on the sentient and walking on the CCTV.
Yeah.
The one that I remember was Tommy Booth, who was outside of Pittsburgh. He was at Bootleggers, if you remember.
Oh yeah.
And he was found face down and in the bar.
Yep.
Sketchy, and he was telling people, God, this is a weird, crazy group of people. I don't want to be around these people anymore. And then he was missing 8 days, cigarette burns, hammers. I think he got hit in the head with something.
People, they suspect, Professor and those guys speculated that he was part of the people doing this, and that he didn't want to do it, and it cost him his life.
It's possible. I'd say drugs, in my opinion, are used in a very minority of cases. I would say it's a less polished version of this MO is to use drugs.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the majority of people who have polished this MO and who have perfected it are not using drugs. just for a number of reasons, which I won't go into, but just efficiency and ensuring that there's less variables and more the variables you can control them, less uncontrollable variables, has to do with not using drugs and using other methods for abduction. It's still in some of the cases you have to wonder how drugs play a factor into some of these people who are seen, who have obviously been drugged and then just disappear. There are cases like that. They do exist.
Well, victims acting weird, right? Even one of the last recent victims in the past month, they said that he'd gotten into a fight, and it was the first fight he'd ever gotten in his entire life, and he was acting crazy, and everybody's acting drunk, or they say he's drunk, or that's the reason why. It's pretty weird. I mean, I've also seen cases and been told that it's possible that they use NyQuil, where they're forced people, not drugging people, but victims have been found with excessive levels of NyQuil.
To keep them sedated for a long period of
Yes.
time. I mean, if I have a victim in my house, I would feed him NyQuil all day long.
Right.
Without, because knowing that if he's found in probably 2 weeks, it's probably out of his system. If they find him sooner, then, the guy was just taking NyQuil for a cold,
Yeah. People have always said, another thing, they've always said that, it's not possible for something to be this big and not be busted and broken up or caught. But the Nivium sex cult, which somebody brought up, I feel like is a perfect example. Extremely funded, very big, was going on a long time.
Look at Epstein. Same thing.
Same. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
This was a case that came out of Chicago, too. Another African-American guy disappeared, promising career, found in water. Ambrose Monnier. That was I was trying to remember.
I remember. Now I do.
No, but you're absolutely right, Jim. Big funds. I mean, how long did Epstein get away with it? Probably 20 years, 25 years at
25
least.
years.
Yeah. So that's about the same time that the Smiley Face Killings has probably been going on, at least 25 years. So,
I mean, it's definitely, from what I've seen, like McNeil was 1997. And I've seen a handful of cases in 1991. I'll say that. A handful, but none others until 97, 98, and then it explodes. And then it's big. And then in 2008, it explodes again. And it has just been spreading everyware. I mean, you see
on that point, I actually, before I did this video, just as you're saying that, I did a case list of people kicked out of bars. I went to my master list and I just filtered them by cases of people kicked out of the bars. And I got basically from 2008 to 2014 a huge uptick in those type of cases. Just what you described there, that time frame. I just want to point that out.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. There's also other places where they're hunting or they're obtaining victims, like what William said about online sex apps. That's a fact. We've seen that in multiple cases that victims look like it. Going to sporting events. Now there's definitely been more than a handful of sporting events. Buffalo Bills game in Buffalo against the Dolphins years ago. Kid got kicked out. Found him in the river a week later.
There was that one at the 49ers game in Santa Clara.
49ers.
Yeah.
He had a famous dad, didn't he? Wilcox.
Wilcox is different. Yeah, that's a different one.
But there was also
that's a Packers game. Sorry, I'm not American, so
no. You're talking about Joe Philbin, his son.
Yes.
Joe Philbin's son.
Yes.
That actually affected the Super Bowl, and I'm going to say that that's a fact because the Packers were defending champions, and the week before they were supposed to go to the Super Bowl, after they had already. They were playing in the NFC Championship game to go to the Super Bowl. They were defending champs, and Philbin was the offensive coordinator for Aaron Rodgers, and his son was murdered. People heard him screaming for help. That's one of the cases that actually got me started doing this because they
very cookie cutter Smiley Face Killers.
And the Packers were so messed up after their offensive coordinator's son had just been killed that they ended up losing to the underdog Giants. And the Giants went on to beat Tom Brady in the Super Bowl that year. I think that if his son doesn't get murdered and the team doesn't deal with that, they probably go on to beat the Giants and win the Super Bowl. That's crazy, I know, but I'm just saying the stuff that's been going on. There last summer or 2 summers ago, was it last summer or 2 summers ago, there were like 3 music festivals that victims in the same summer, within the same month, same 2 months, that vanished from the concert, found in the river, found in the creek.
Wow. Yeah. Remember Jimmy Slack out of Pittsburgh? That was one of the concert. Yeah.
Yep.
That'd be a great hunting grounds. I mean, you add that to the list of cases where if you were trying to convince someone, you just filter it down to cases of people kicked out of a bar, celebrating something, holidays and concerts. A very focused area of cases. You know, you shed off a lot of loose weight that is very difficult to, you know, make it work with those cases. But those cases, I mean, that list of very focused cases speaks for itself, man. Yeah.
Right. Do you remember Anthony?
Excuse.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Always an excuse for people are drinking. He was just drunk.
Right.
You know, always a level of, so they can just blame it on something, and that's immediately. How many cases do you read like, oh, he was acting funny, he must have been a dumbass? You know,
half of them have to be something
so
like
disgusting.
That.
Watching the same people have to rectify these cases where the victim is known to not be too drunk before they're found in the water is actually funny, because they don't know how to logic that between the 2 cases, right? Too drunk, so he fell in the water. Not drunk, probably still fell in the water. Like, okay.
Right.
Guys, I mean, Igor, there's been multiple men who are supposedly going to the park to jog, gone, not drinking anything, found in the park lake 10 days later. I mean, that Naz Muhammad was an example. He was just jogging with his friends at the park.
That's a good point Hilly Dog makes. I want to throw that in. He says in Colombia, it's easy to acquire scopolamine. I think that comes down to why we see certain deviations. I mean, obviously, certain killers have access to certain utility that other killers don't. And that depends on where they live. I know some places electroshock weapons are banned in some states, but in other states, you can buy them readily online. And I think, you know, I think he's on to something there.
Scopolamine?
Not just scopolamine, just in terms of why certain people use different types of utility for these cases. You know, the quarry, for instance, is a piece of utility, right? They dump them in the quarry because they have no other utility. There's no water. He's saying that, you know, depending on where you live, you know, your utility may be different. In Colombia, it's very easy to acquire scopolamine. So maybe that factors into what somebody who's using this MO may use. In South Carolina, you can, you know, freely grab an electroshock weapon. So why wouldn't you just use that? But in New York, it's banned. You know, if only you're a police officer, you can get that. So there, if you know, you might have to use drugs, which we have seen in some of those cases in New York with drugs are factoring in. So good point by that poster there.
Yeah, I don't think that's being used though in American victims, because I just don't think the readability and availability of that drug is very easy to get, right? In the place,
no doubt. Most victims probably not. You're right. Yeah.
Let's see. Does anybody have any questions or anything? Anybody want to add anything? Anything we missed? We're about 1:12.
Hey, I was just going to say one thing real fast too. If you want to go on my Twitter page, I use hashtags, and I've always used hashtags as a way of being able to search victims in a state or a time, so that you can search my old tweets and see by state, see for yourself. If you want to go search Michigan, you use the hashtag abbreviation state, like MI Michigan plus Smiley Face Killers or SFK.
Right, so
if you use that combination,
right.
There you go.
Let's see. Oh, I have to put in SFK, MA, or what? Or both of these?
Just go hashtag SFK and then hashtag like MI. You can do New Jersey or New York or
wow.
See what I mean? And then and if they are able to, some of the stories, they like the media outlets will get rid of them because they don't want them, but because the name is there, there's a record of that, even if you can't find it on the internet anymore.
Interesting.
That's why I did this.
Right. So many cases. Oh my gosh.
It's disgusting.
Yeah. Which is why somebody like Spingola has a real time putting logic to them, and why he's always going to get out logicked with these cases, because he refuses to address them on a case by case basis. And the second he does that, he would be a believer.
Igor, all that goes out the window when you're able to send him story after story of missing men and say, hey, this guy's a victim right here. He's going to be found in the water. And then that happens over and over and over. And there's no way he can deny that. He can't just keep making it's all posturing, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
strange.
I mean, it kind of, what's it? The Center for Homicide Studies. Remember that thing they did on Smiley Face Killers? That was a joke.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of the Spingola report where they just don't look into all the cases.
Right.
They just, there's only 14 cases because Gilbert and Gannon said that.
Right.
Oh, guys, whoa.
That report was heavily based on the FBI finding that the cases weren't connected, which is fine. I mean, if someone wants to tell me that all the cases are connected, I'll probably tell them that they're probably crazy because there's just too many goddamn cases all over the world, that it just makes sense that there will be separate unsubs that are distinct from one another using the MO. They don't know each other, right? But they still know the MO. And that is something that's different than what the FBI said. The FBI said that certain cases were not connected. Fine. I will admit that because it's a pretty hard stretch to say that there is something that's connecting all of the cases, every single one of them. But as I said, you focus on specific ones, specific groupings, and then it starts to get interesting. And we don't know the FBI is not looking into certain groupings as they relate. We don't know they're not looking into specific individual cases, because their assertion that the cases are not connected doesn't mean that they're not looking into specific cases as homicides, as distinct homicides with different unsubs, which is what me and Jim Smith and yourself, Will, have been talking about. There's just too many cases, and it's just a bad stereotype about these cases that they all revolve around graffiti, and
everybody's drinking. And there's accidental drownings that happen all the time.
So many stereotypes floating around these cases.
Gosh.
Yeah.
People. I say this all the time. Men do not get drunk and drown. That does not happen. I mean, if it does, it's the exception, in my opinion, right? I mean, we used to get hammered growing up and go swimming with our friends, and this never happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. No, it never happened around when I was growing up too.
No way.
Yeah.
See, it's funny because I believe it's the unwitnessed portion that makes it so rare. So
right.
that all drowning statistics have all types of drownings encompassed in the statistics. So if you're water skiing and you drown but nobody sees you, or if all your friends are paddleboarding in the water and you drown, no one sees you, it's still an unwitnessed drowning. But there was people in the area, right? There was people around, and and people know what happened. There's evidence as to how you drowned and why you were in the water.
Right.
In all these cases,
swimming.
Exactly. In all these cases, unwitnessed, unexplained as to how or why they entered the water. That alone, that is shared amongst every single case. None of these cases have evidence of somebody falling down an embankment, and you see all their stuff scattered, and there's evidence that they fell down this part and they're in the water now. They don't. In none of these cases, they know where the victim went in. Very little cases. They're just and as such, they have no idea how they entered, why they entered, under what circumstances they entered, which is what makes these cases so interesting and rare, in my opinion.
Yeah,
rarer than your average drowning case.
For sure, I agree. I definitely have seen evidence that boats are used in some of these crimes. How this just goes to prove how organized this is. I can tell you, Joe McNeil, for instance, I was just having a conversation. There's a water treatment plant where there's been multiple victims found in that area where McNeil was found. And those are areas that only a boat would be able to go. They're not, same with Dakota James. I would think people thought that Dakota was dumped with a boat. These are not people dumping them on the side of the river and just throwing them in and driving a car and running off. Oh no. Some, but even where Garrett Walker was found, they were saying that's a very industrial part where he was found. So just really proves another level of sophistication that, these aren't dumb thugs. If they were dumb thugs, they would have been caught already.
Right. So they're thinking, but they've made mistakes. They probably could have been busted,
For sure.
Yeah.
Even if
just nobody's looking out.
Even if they were busted, how would you know they're connected, right? So this is
you wouldn't.
it's an interesting thing to muse about, is that who knows, maybe there have been people caught in the past and who have just been blamed to isolated abductions or isolated incidents,
or just isolated druggings. Oh, the bartender drugged me. Oh yeah, I got busted for drugging. Sorry.
yeah,
It.
no, he
So,
goes to
but
jail
the
for a
guy,
couple of weeks.
yeah, he's
exactly,
got 2 people locked up in a dungeon.
So one of the cases here, in fact, it's actually the first case in Georgia, I think. His name is Justin Gaines' case, and he was at a bar in 2008, Mama's Country Bar, and he left, and there's video of him. People are watching him leave, and I think he's the first case. And it's funny because they have people in jail, and they're trying not for his murder. He's never been found. He's one of the people like you were talking about, never been found. He looks like a smiley face killer victim. The story reads it. And long story short, they have a guy in jail, and he's a gang member, and he's part of a group, and he swears that he's innocent. And the reason why they think that he's involved is because his family lived near, and they're involved in gangs. But one of the funny things is that when he went missing, they went to a marina called Sunrise Marina, and that's the first place they looked for him. And since then, there's been like 5 more men, and it haven't been always young. But it's just that even the guy who's in jail, his girlfriend was contacting me through Facebook and swearing that what I do proves that he is innocent. Which is, it's hard to tell. Very strange.
Yeah, there's a comment there about you just put it up there about how the FBI views lone wolf serial killers. It's true. They don't, and this is why Jack Murphy's article is so good. They don't view lone wolf serial killers as distinct individuals using the same MO around the world. I mean, that's something that's fairly rare. And unresearched in the course of criminology and scholarly research pertaining to criminology. And Jack Murphy makes that point, is that perhaps we're looking for something entirely different. Right. And it was very refreshing to hear that type of view on these cases, because I agree, we are looking at something entirely different that kind of defies what people view lone wolf serial killers are.
Right. And I've actually researched 2 cases of gay serial killers who they think each author who investigated them thought they worked with somebody else, but only one went to jail. One was Randy Kraft with 100 victims in the LA area. And I think it was McDonough said that one of the bodies was dumped out of a window of a car. It had to have been somebody else to do it. It couldn't have been the driver. And then the other one was Eiler, who was Geraldine Choleric. And Eiler was the one who got busted, but he was taking somebody to somebody's house, and she said that there was somebody else was working with him. So those 2 people didn't get busted, and those were tandem killers, kind of like the Hillside Strangler. So sometimes people do work together, and possibly even in groups. Multiple serial killers. Let's see. Do you guys have anything else you want to add?
No, just let the questions through. I'm pretty much done. I don't know about Jim. If there's any other cases you want to bring to attention, I think the quarry cases. I think the quarry cases, and then Santo and Bascarin. They have so many connections to previous cases that I think are just the particular ones that I would highlight for your viewers.
Yeah, Bascarin is really something else. It fits the full
weird
MO.
Weird how many people went missing and were found in water just like that in the same area as Bascarin. I mean,
and this is the guy Jim thinks is going to show up sometime. So he's missing October 29th.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't know about this one. I've thought about this because we, there has been some weird clusters recently, and a lot of people are talking about these new cases like Walker, Bascarin, Bone, Santo. I almost think that this one's not going to be found, because it would just so much discussion around the new cases. If there's another case that you can draw to some previous cases, which Santo's one of them, there's a lot of other cases that happened on Michigan State University as well, the exact same cookie cutter cases. Man, there's going to be a storm of people talking this up, and maybe something happens. I mean, and maybe the killers know that. I don't know. I mean, I think it might be too much to put this guy in water at this point.
You would think so.
Yeah,
you would think so, but I don't, just because of the holiday aspect, and the holidays are a big part of what's going on. I mean, you can set your clock to it. I start watching because I know what's coming. right? Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. This is the busiest time of year where people are out drinking and partying and enjoying life, and people are being preyed upon. I wish I was wrong, but yeah, I do think he's going to be found. I mean, there's always a Christmas victim. There's multiple, usually Christmas victims, people found on Christmas.
Look at this picture that I have up, Jim and Igor, because in the background, it's probably unintentional, but there's a smiling jack-o'-lantern. Isn't that crazy?
That is unintentional.
Wow, unintentional probably.
This comment by Pixie about the Manchester, England cases. I mean, I have a lot of personally. I don't know about you, Jim. I can only assume you do as well. But I have a lot of people from England contacting me. There's been a huge renewal of interest in these cases, particularly scholarly interest, because there's so many new cases in the UK. And in the UK, it just seems like they're more interested in researching them. I don't know why, but they haven't. Whereas in the US, it's like, it's been passed. It's allegedly been discredited by the FBI. So it's kind of like a thing in the past. Whereas the UK, I mean, it's a very hot topic. A lot of people are talking about some of these new cases that have happened.
Yeah,
interesting. When you say recent cases, are you saying within the last couple months, kind of like the American case?
Not just Manchester. Yes, in the last 2 years, there's been a lot of cases that have been brought to my attention all over England.
It's slowed though in Manchester, right?
I don't know about Manchester particularly. I'm not too into the English cases because there's so many of them. I mean, you have to pick and choose your battles as a researcher. I mean,
sure.
I've been through all of the Manchester cases. There's like 60 or 70. Gary J has investigated those. There's 4 or 5 that are definitely Smiley Face Killer type cases, but a lot of the other ones don't. There's a lot of, homeless people who fall in, and some that really just don't kind of fit the profile. But there's some guy's calling his mom screaming. I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
And at big venues, sport venues or music venues. So definitely, I think some of those cases fit. I covered those in the first documentary I did.
Yeah. I would say that it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier about different areas have different MOs. But if I've seen it grow in Europe, Manchester being one of the worst. Amsterdam is also bad. In Paris, London, there's multiple Australia, Scotland, and Wales. All of the UK has had this problem. Young men disappearing.
Sweden as well. Deal. One of the Discord guys sent me a Swedish case, which is who knows whether it's related to any other case, but it was a case of a young man going missing after leaving a party at an odd hour. He was alone and he was found in water, and it was a Swedish case. So I mean. That's why you have to approach it case by case, and making any sweeping allegations about all the victims and how who they were and whether or not they were particularly drunk or they succumbed to an accident. You just have to focus on the case by case basis because there's so much differentiation, different patterns and stuff I
studied one in Amsterdam. His name was Ramon Barinsma, and that was definitely a case. He's running around, he's upright, he's out late at night, and literally found in water that if you fell in, you would just stand up and walk out.
Stand up.
Crazy, yeah.
Right. And the reason why I do feel like this is so big is because, and this is something, I'm the only person who says this, is the dates of what I just said, where if you're watching this, you'll see victims all over, right? Or it's the same time. There'll be victims for New Year's. There'll be victims for these holidays for some reason. And it's the same over there. It's the same in Canada, right? It's
a lot of Canadian cases. I've been because I'm from Canada, I've been looking into a lot of Canadian cases. Dude. It's shocking how many there are.
It's grown.
Fit the cookie cutter in Canada. That's my new interest recently is Canadian cases.
Man, It is huge. It is huge. In fact, they've been more vicious in the past couple years than America. I would say the last 2 years.
Wow.
Man, Canada has exploded.
Jim, you told me about that Thunder Bay where they were getting rid of indigenous girls, right? There was that
Thunder Bay. Yeah. Thunder Bay had so many young people going missing and being found in the water there, in the rivers and creeks there, that they started a watch.
That's right.
Just like in La Crosse. And these people are walking around town making sure nothing's happening.
I remember that. There was a guy. Didn't you get me in touch with some guy?
Mm-hmm. He was on Vice.
Yeah, that's right.
He runs the thing. I mean,
Wow.
they had graffiti or saying something that the cases were connected in one of the places, if I recall correctly. And that's not very far. That's just right over the border, like in Wisconsin and Minnesota.
Right.
I mean, I'm very open-minded. I don't think obviously this is monsters. I don't. This is people. This is organized. And what ties it all together is the dates and the MO, in my opinion. Right. And I'm not saying every homeless person who is found in the river is a victim, but when a young man who looks like these guys is at a bar and he vanishes just the same as in Manchester or Amsterdam and he's found in the water, I mean, how could you not say the comparison? Why are there so many victims? I challenge everybody to watch my Twitter feed for the rest of the year until New Year's, and you'll see.
Oh, yeah.
You'll see. Just like Halloween, just like both these guys, Anaki and Santo. It was Halloween weekend. Wasn't Halloween on Saturday night? It started then.
I think you could probably insert a lot of motives into the modus operandi, which is why we see differentiation and which is why the motive is likely different based upon which particular unsub we're talking about around the world, and how distinct they are from other unsubs. I think you could take different motives, like a whole bunch of motives that have already been speculated by people, including Snuff. You put them all into the same basket and this MO works for it, right? You might need to do certain different deviations. But I think that's what's so interesting is that I wouldn't get too caught up on the motive because the motive is likely to be different depending on which unsub you're referring to. It's the MO, as you said, which is similar, which can be, used for different motives successfully.
Great point.
Guys, we're at 90 minutes. I'm pretty much burnt out. Is there anything you'd like to add or anything I missed before we wrap it up and give contact information as well for both of you? Jim, you want to start? Jim?
I'll just say thanks. I've said everything. I appreciate the support and thanks for allowing me to come talk with you guys. Igor, you're so smart. And William, you're so talented. I appreciate being allowed to even talk and debate with you guys. So thank you.
Thank you. Anything you'd like to add, Igor? Anything I missed or contact information?
Yeah, I think this chat was long overdue, Jim, and I think the three of us getting together was probably long overdue. And I'm on Twitter as well. You can find me through my name. I won't bore you with anything else, and that's about it for me.
It's at Igor Sarsky, right?
No, I don't believe so, but you can search me. I believe I'm the only one under Igor Sarsky on Twitter. So
gotcha. So I'll put that in there, and then I got 2 documentaries, and I've done a little bit of other stuff, some documents and some things like that. If people want to look at my stuff, my website's William Ramsey Investigates, and I'll put links to my documentaries up. But thanks so much, guys, for joining me. It's really great to be with both of you. Thanks so much.
Appreciate it.
Cool. All right, stay there. All right, man.